Well, welcome to our very first episode of Honest Cars.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Warren. It's amazing, this whole concept, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and I love the fact that we're here right now recording this because it just kind of fell into place at the right time, right?
Absolutely, and for me, I'm a financial guy, and,
Yeah.
and I've got to be careful with my money and everything.
Yeah.
But I have a weakness, and it is cars. So I thought, well, let's make a weakness into a strength. Let's sit with a guru,
True.
and let's talk about cars, but maybe I don't have to spend all my money on them.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for calling me a guru, first and foremost. My name is Francisco Nwamba. Just to introduce myself, I am an automotive journalist and entrepreneur as well, working within the automotive industry. And my journey is actually quite an interesting one in that I grew up in a family that was also very car crazy. I've got a Mozambican dad, so he loved his Alphas and all that and all those kind of brands. And at the same time, my mom as well came from a family where cars was a big deal. So growing up was a car heavy family. So my older brother and I, from a very early age, were big consumers of car content, and we always wanted to do something in the car world. He's 7 years older than me, so he got the proper career head start, and he started working at VW, then started working at BMW, and naturally, being a younger brother, I got a job also working at VW through his contacts.
Fantastic.
So it became quite interesting for me. So I sold cars at a very early age. From the age of 18, I was selling vehicles. And I did it for about 2.5 years. And then from there, I went into the automotive journalism space because I always wanted to write about cars because we watched a lot of Top Gear as kids.
Yeah.
So naturally from there, what happened was that I had an opportunity to start a little blog because I emailed every single motoring editor in the country saying, I want to do anything. I'll mop the floor, I'll clean tires and all that. And no one listened, funny enough. And eventually one of the editors emailed me and said, join the South African Guild of Motor Journalism. And from there, I had a blog that was doing decent amounts of views. And my career started from there. Have had great opportunities. I've written for Top Gear magazine in South Africa. I currently present a show on Ignition TV, doing a weekly TV show. Have done a couple stints on radio. And I've written for quite a lot of people, some newspapers, some magazines, and done a lot of stuff within the automotive space. But I'm very grateful for the fact that I sold cars because living the life of motor journalists is very interesting. Weekly, we have different test cars. We are always attending events. So we are really in the industry, talking to very important people, CEOs, MDs, understanding what's happening in the automotive industry as a whole. But it does become quite, let me say, bougie.
And cozy, right?
Very much so. And my whole thing is that, we do this whole launch rotation and driving fancy cars, and cars are getting very expensive nowadays. And it starts to get a little bit out of touch with what's going on the ground. And I think that's why this opportunity has become such a great one because, like you said, honest money, it's all about helping people honestly plan their finances. And Honest Cars aims to be the exact same thing, helping people make the right car buying decisions. Because we all love cars, but we don't want to hurt our pockets by our love for cars at the end of the day.
And I think for me, the exciting part about this is that we can have some fun. We can maybe get a bit of exposure every now and then to something something out there and exciting. But at the same time, we're talking to real human beings.
Yes.
For whom a car is a huge expense and it's a necessary thing. And we want to help them make the best decision. So that was what was so exciting for me about this project is we're not being paid by a car company to promote something. If they don't like what we say about their cars, that's their tough luck, right? We're going to do it honestly.
Yes.
We're going to give our real views, and we hope that people find value. And certainly our goal here and our market is the listener, the person that needs to get the value. Our market is not we want to drive a fancy car over the weekend, so let's make the motoring company happy.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key in this.
Exactly that.
We hope everyone's happy. We don't want to upset anybody, but if we've got an honest view and we've got something to say, and it's not helpful, it's not maybe a bit hurtful, maybe to a manufacturer, that's their problem, right? They've done something that deserves to be commented on.
100%. And that's the thing, it's also the frequently asked questions that day-to-day consumers have who are using vehicles. Because as we've mentioned before, transport is a big issue in South Africa. We don't have reliable public transport that everybody can use. Generally when it comes to public transport, it is a specific LSM that's operating within that space. So, it's also a big education point for us that if you're going to be now buying a vehicle, you're making the right car buying decisions and you're not just doing something that your heart wants to do, but also something that is going to be good for your pocket. And there's also a bunch of questions that a lot of consumers ask themselves that we're going to cover in the show. For instance, when it comes to servicing your vehicle, what do you do? The type of fuel, when do you change your tires? So there's quite a few important things that oftentimes as automotive journalists, we just say, I'm driving this fancy thing, but actually there's very on the ground questions that we'd like to actually cover and help the consumer just be a bit more informed.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. A lot of the time, if I open the bonnet of my car, there's this big plastic cover and it's got a fancy logo. I mean, it means nothing to me. I can't tell you what's under that cover. And so if someone says to me, there's the XYZ fandangle that needs to be changed, what do I say? Or can I have a second opinion? I don't. So I think it's great that we can actually start to provide some of that. I know it sounds corny, but under the hood stuff that people need to know.
Very much so, very much so. And just talking about the industry as a whole, and one of the things that, for instance, I've been experiencing quite a lot as an automotive journalist is electric cars. In the last few months, I've been doing this now probably going on to 7 years, and it's quite interesting that in the last 5 months, I've probably reviewed over 5 different electric vehicles.
In South Africa?
In South Africa, ranging from Porsches to VWs. Recently got out of an Audi. I've driven a Mini that's electric, and it's quite interesting how the automotive industry, because overseas now, there's big pressure on these manufacturers. They've given them these goals, 2030, you need to stop producing what they call ICE engine, internal combustion engines, because obviously it's not good for the environment, so there's a big push on electric cars. But South Africa's now, because we kind of operate on European standards, even though we're quite a unique African country in that we're probably the only African country that's got an automotive industry the way we do. We operate quite similar to Europe in that there's a protected industry, there are manufacturers that are building cars here. So the government, there's a lot of pressure on them to do the same thing now. But my concern with that is that there's two factors that come into play. And I'd love to actually find out from you where your mind is, because I sit with manufacturers and they tell us that, electric cars are the future, customers are going to buy into it, it's going to be a happy world and everyone's going to be good to go. But then you ask yourself, okay, how much does your vehicle cost? And currently, the cheapest electric vehicle that you can buy in South Africa is just under 700,000 Rand. It's about 680 odd grand. It's a Mini, it's a 3-door. And it gives you a range of around about, realistically, 150 to 200 kilometers per charge. So as a consumer, where do you honestly think, I'm being told all these funny, amazing stories by manufacturers, but as a person who's not in the automotive industry, I'd love to find out what your point of view is on electrification.
So I think there are a couple of themes here. One is about doing the right thing. So for me, it is the right thing to do to move to electric. I have no attachment to the fossil fuel industry. I mean, it bothers me to burn that fossil fuel all the time. Yeah. So certainly in terms of personal values, there's a huge alignment with the whole kind of electric car industry. The next point will be around this. I think I've heard the phrase range anxiety. Yes. So how far can I drive my car practically every day? Yeah. Now driving to and from work, that's not a big drive for me. Charging the car at night, no problem. I've got solar in my house. If I can use the sun to kind of charge my car a little bit, great. Yeah. I'm saving a bit of money there. So I think that's good. But what happens when I do road trips? So that bothers me a lot because I think we are an enormous country physically. Yeah. And I don't, I've seen some charging stations every now and then in cities, but it's not like, driving from Joburg to to Cape Town. Yeah. When I stop in Colesberg, I don't see 50 electric plug points there. And what am I going to do, That's the thing. And then when I stay at a B&B, do I have to take an extension cord with me and plug it in? So that's going on in my head, to be honest. Yeah. And then the last thing was this money thing. It's a big issue for me. So I mean, my wife drives an 11-year-old car now. Yeah. She dearly, from an emotional and kind of values points of view, wants an electric car, but she is financially disciplined. We're going to call her a spreadsheet queen on the show because I think that's what she is. And the spreadsheet queen says no, because it's almost that feels like the car is double the price of the comparable internal combustion engine. So why would we spend the double? And that's the thing that's bothering me. So if that could change, even if it cost us a bit more, I think we would go there.
True, very true. And the scary thing is, so last week I drove an Audi e-tron, 55 TFSI, so it is the middle ground one. I think you get one in the lower ground. It starts at around about, believe it or not, 1.9 million rand.
Oh, man. From low, that's the low level.
Yeah, it's quite a fancy car. It comes with a bunch of stuff. The tech is amazing, and the one that I had was about 2.1 million rand with the options, probably closer to 2.4 million. But again, 2.4 million rand is what I remember not too long ago was the price of a supercar.
Yeah.
And nowadays, that's what you're paying for an electric vehicle. And I understand, for the market that they are offering these vehicles to, it is a pricing that is really very, very, very niche. But my whole thing is that there's a big tax implication that in South Africa there is when it comes to these luxury good taxes. So as a result, the manufacturers are charging high prices because the government hasn't come to the party in terms of giving the tax break that you need. Because in Europe, they're actually, saying to the guys, if you want to drive electric vehicles, we are going to incentivize you. You're going to pay less here and there. The same way, if you drive a petrol-powered car in, level 1 in London, you're going to pay more money. So it's a similar thing there, but that needs to come right very quickly because Audi, for instance, is launching 6 electric cars. Mercedes-Benz now is launching 6 electric cars as well.
In SA?
In SA this year.
Wow.
Can you believe it? So that's 2 brands already. That's going to be 11 new electric vehicles in the country. So, and all these cars are going to come in at no more, I reckon the cheapest will probably be around about 1.5, 1.6 million. BMW's one has also come out 1.6 million. So from a mass scale, there needs to be change, and I'm sure that the powers that be, the very smart people and the manufacturers are sitting there making deals with governments because there's a lot of pressure for them to go electric. But at this point right now, for the everyday consumer, it's just not there from a pricing perspective.
No, I mean that's if you talk about 2.4 million rand, and and as you say, it's not a supercar.
Yeah.
It's just an electric. I mean, I'm not saying just to be dismissive, but actually, practically, it's just an electric SUV.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
So for me, if I look at this, I would say 2 things. One, I really hope it's not Gwede Mantashe who's involved in the negotiating those taxes down because he wants to keep the fossil fuel industry alive as long as possible. And so we need proactivity from government on that. I agree with that. But if we look at this and we would say, well, so maybe to ask you, what would let's say a second-hand, decent, SUV for 4 people, like to seat 4 people, what are we looking at brand new? Just decent German,
Starting price just under 1 million rand. Okay. I would say that is the starting price. 900,000 rand for a decent family SUV. That is a German car. Yeah.
And so what you've just driven at well, let's say then a comparable electric at the moment might well be that then in the region of another 1 million on top of that.
100%. So it's a lot. It really is a lot. And the whole thing as well is that it's a completely different driving experience as well. So driving electric cars, it's unlike anything you've driven before because first and foremost, the car is dead quiet. So you get into the car, it's quiet. So the experience is a bit jarring and then you get used to it. Also, the power delivery is instant. So even if you've got any electric car, it's always going to be fast. Even the little Mini that I drove, it has a small little battery, but because there's no torque that needs to build or power that needs to build, when you put your foot flat, it just like takes off. So that's a new thing. So consumers are actually going to have to relearn how to do certain things when it comes to just driving these vehicles. And then another thing is obviously, like we mentioned, range. So said Audi, last week I had to go to my in-laws out in Springs. And my colleague had that vehicle, so he was actually met him up at the DC charger, and I had about 120 kilometers of range.
Sorry.
Oh yes.
DC. What's DC charger? Is this Marvel Comics? What's going on? What are we talking about?
So yes, apologies for that side. As motor journalists, we always have our little terms that we use. So with the charging of an electric car, you get either an AC current or a DC current. Okay. So the alternating or the direct current on that, and the direct current is the fastest way for you to charge your electric car.
So my house, you're saying that's going to be the normal. That's AC.
Going to be normal.
So that's slower.
Yeah, that's going to be slower. That's going to be roughly, if it's set up correctly, 8 to 12 hours to charge your vehicle from nothing to full. So an overnight charge, basically. The direct current ones, on the other hand, you can get in 45 minutes, you can get about 80% of your battery. To an hour, you're going to get your full battery done. So I met him up at one of those full battery chargers. Wasn't working as fast as what we normally thought it would. So by the time I got there, we only had 120 kilometers of range. Okay. And that was in Bryanston, and we had to leave from Bryanston to Springs. So we get to Springs, we've got about 50 kilometers left, and it's exactly 65 kilometers on our way home. So out comes the extension cords.
And it's literally that.
Exactly that. Okay. Yeah. So I had to go and plug it in. We had to route the extension cord upstairs, and it was a whole mission. So that's the whole thing as well, is that if you're going to be doing long distances, if you don't plan your journeys properly, you can find yourself, you're stuck in that range anxiety, as they mention.
And I'm just thinking, like when I do a road trip with my wife now, I mean, she gets range anxiety when our petrol car, or it's actually a diesel, but when our diesel car is like 150 k's to go,
There we go.
and we know there's a fuel station 50 k's time, she's already going, what's going on.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, and I'm just thinking about, I mean, I don't know if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are many of these sort of charging stations now along the big highways, intercity.
Interestingly, there are charging points around about Harrismith, and then also I've actually know a gent who drives an electric vehicle, and he is able to drive his to Colesberg. He says every 200 kilometers there is at least one electric charging point. Some of them though don't work as fast as they should, because in theory the electric charging points should be the ones that are the direct current. So some of them are not working as well as they should be. So what would normally be a 15-minute stop for a coffee break, would be now an hour to 2 hour stop because you're still charging your car. So infrastructure-wise, we do need to beef it up, but brands like Audi and other brands as well that are working together, I think Jaguar, they all have universal charging points. So it doesn't matter so you can all plug it in at any charging point. And I think they are working with a company called Grid Cars that is going to be putting more and more charging points in the country. But for now, me being, on the other side of it all, it's a bit interesting. It's a big transition.
So if I had to give a conclusion to your question about cars, electric cars for now, it sounds to me like something aligns with my values. That the world is going there.
Yeah.
South Africa's behind.
Yeah.
And I need to watch the space, but I'm not sure now that I'm going to commit. Well, I know I won't commit the money, and even if I had the money just to burn, I'd probably still not trust the quantum of charging ability at the moment.
That's the thing. So my nuggets of information that I'd give to somebody who's looking at an electric car now or in the near future would be, you don't have to go the full electric route. If your budget allows and you can afford to do a small electric vehicle, for instance, something like that Mini, if you do have a small car that you want to spend some money on, you can go that route. But there's also hybrid technology. So, many brands, for instance, Toyota has got hybrids, some of the other brands as well, I can't think of anything on the top of my mind, they do offer hybrid solutions. I think Lexus does as well. So the good thing is that you get the best of both worlds, and it helps you kind of understand the ecosystem of how the electric vehicles work. So some of them are plug-in hybrids, and you can kind of look in the market there what you can find that is going to give you a petrol power, so you can still do your long road trips, but day to day you can probably run in EV mode and do your day-to-day commute in electric. So there are vehicles that are currently in South Africa that do offer that kind of technology. So I'd say if you want to kind of get into that space now, maybe you start off small. Go for the next maybe 2 to 3.5 years, go hybrid, and then, when you're ready and you're confident, do the electric thing, Matt. Yeah.
I think I need to have a conversation with my wife about the hybrid thing. I think that might even be a show on its own, as you've got to explain to me now about secondhand values and
Sure.
and all that stuff. But thank you. I think for me, I know the show's not all about me, but I dig that. I like the idea of the hybrid for now. Thank you.
No, thank you. And obviously we'd like to thank our viewers, our listeners for tuning in. We look forward to actually explaining and going through more in-depth topics of the automotive industry. I'm looking forward to picking your brain quite a bit, because I'd love to find out just how we can help consumers finance their deals a bit better buying decisions, and also just getting people out of that mindset to think, I need to buy the fanciest thing, I need to show up and show off. Rather, let's make the best decisions, and let's rather build a good financial, secure future for ourselves and not have to splurge on vehicles.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Wonderful.